Hello, Cleveland. We have officially sounded the alarm on the second Browns victory of the year. I am here with my co-host, Jack Curry. How you doing today, Jack?
Victory Mondays are always good, man. It was great today. You know, I'm at the gym wearing my Odell Beckham shirt, and the guy that runs the gym comes up and he goes, "Isn't Mondays always better after yesterday?" I said, "Hell yeah."
It really is. And, I'm Anthony Joki. We're here with you to break down the Browns' 40-25 thrashing of the Baltimore Ravens. They scored a garbage touchdown late in the game. So the Browns pretty much dominated the second half of that game to really propel themselves into first place in the AFC North. And I would have to look it up, but I would imagine it's been quite a few years since the Browns have been in sole possession of first place in the AFC North in many, many years. And to have that after the first 4 weeks, especially the early part of the schedule is not easy. It's still going to be tough over the next 3-4 weeks. You have the Seahawks. You got another Monday Night Football game. You got the Patriots. So those games will be tough. But to be in first place after the quarter point in the season, Jack, has to feel pretty good, especially after that Week 1 disappointing loss to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, no doubt. It actually is the first time we've been first place in a division since 2014, which I would have to imagine that was that 7-4 start after we beat Cincinnati on Thursday night. But yeah, to be at this point, you have to be happy with 2-2, first place in the division, 4 games in. Obviously, the debacle that was the opener, and then the drama that unfolded after the Rams game, to sit where we are right now, in the driver's seat in the AFC North, you have to feel great about it. Whether you're in that locker room or whether you cover the team like we do.
Yeah, how about winning the first 2 games on the road this year? The Browns have had a really hard time on the road, even playing at home, but particularly on the road, over the last 5 years. But to win their first 2 games on the road, have the opportunity to go in the next Monday night against the San Francisco 49ers, go 3-0 on the road to start the season, that has to make you feel pretty good as a football team to be able to go on the road in tough conditions and win football games. That's not something that's easy to do in the NFL, is to go on the road and win. So hopefully the Browns can stretch that to 3-0 on Monday night. This game against Baltimore Ravens was the first time the Browns have scored 40-plus points in a game since 2009 against Kansas City.
In a victory.
In a victory. It's the first time they scored 40-plus points in a division game since 2007 when they played that back-and-forth game with Cincinnati that I want to say ended like 57-53 or something ridiculous like that, and they ended up losing that one. So the offense finally started to click all together yesterday. The Browns got their biggest margin of victory over the Ravens in matchup history, which is crazy. That's only 15 points, but ever since we came back to the league in the NFL in '99, these matchups winning against the Ravens have been very few. So to win by that margin, the offense finally started to click together like we talked about on our pregame show. We talked a few ways of how this offense can get clicking, and one of the things we said was Nick Chubb had to get going, and he sure proved that yesterday with 20 carries for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, he kept the offense clicking, kept it moving, and first running back since Jerome Harrison to have over 160 yards and 3 touchdowns in a Browns uniform, of course, but he was absolutely dominant. That 88-yard touchdown is going to stand out. I seen him, Chris Johnson, and another running back. They're the only 3 in league history to have 2 85-plus yard touchdown runs in their first 2 seasons in league history. So, he's in pretty historic company there. And, like we said on the pregame show, to get this offense clicking, you got to feed Chubb. And, it wasn't just the 88-yard touchdown run. The other 2 touchdown runs down in the red zone, he was so shifty, making defenders miss. And, he's the total package when it comes to as a running back. And he's, improving as a receiver as well. So, to see Chubb clicking right now and to get the offense moving, it's everything we were hoping for coming into the season.
Yeah, and it's a perfect remedy to get this offense back on track. Is the way Chubb was running football yesterday, it definitely opened up the play-action pass, allowed Baker Mayfield to have his best game of the season, going 20 of 30 for 342 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And a lot of that had to do with play action in the game yesterday. And, you can credit all that to Nick Chubb. And I think you would be remiss to talk about Nick Chubb having a good day without talking about how well the offensive line performed. We finally had a full game of the whole offensive line being in there, the whole starting offensive line, with Greg Robinson at left tackle and Chris Hubbard at right tackle. So it was nice to see that unit kind of start to gel, and once they got things rolling yesterday, they were able to pave the way for Nick Chubb and protected Baker Mayfield, only giving up 1 sack.
Yeah, and that sack was on the opening drive, and to see them step up after that, and they played extremely well. And not just them, the tight ends, I think we got to mention. Demetrius Harris and Pharaoh Brown really stepped up in the blocking game, opened up holes for Chubb, and, that whole group gave Baker time. Baker was confident. He stepped up in the pocket. There was a couple times he would roll out, but I think for the most part, he trusted that offensive line more, and they gave him time to throw. I seen he had the second fastest throwing time too yesterday, around 2.44 seconds. So, they gave him the time, and Baker also was good about getting the ball out quickly and finding the open man regardless of who it was.
Yeah, talk about, Baker Mayfield a little bit more. This was his best game of the season. This is the 3rd time that he's posted 300-plus yard games against the Baltimore Ravens in the 3 games that he's played against them. It's nice to have a quarterback in a division that is able to kind of light up the other teams. We've been on the receiving end of that for so many years. But talk more about his performance yesterday. What impressed you the most, and the way he was able to bounce back from a few poor games to start out the season.
Yeah, I think it got back to the Baker Mayfield we saw last year in the second half. And I think it was more of, Kitchens easing back into that offense as well. And like I said, Baker, he spread it around. He hit 7 different receivers according to the box score. Odell Beckham wasn't a big factor. He was more of a decoy, more or less. We'll talk about that in a minute. But just to spread the ball around, find the open guy, not trying to force it to the receivers. I think Baker was trying to do that, trying to keep his, star receivers happy. But yesterday it was more or less like, whoever's open, if I see you open, I'm going to get you the ball. And that's what he did. No matter if it was Jarvis Landry or, Beckham on a couple times, he tried to get it to Ratley. Pharaoh Brown had a solid 20-yard catch. Ricky Seals-Jones got involved in the passing game. And, he also dumped it off to the running backs, and they made plays as well. So I think with Baker, it's all about getting the ball out quickly. And, as long as he finds the open man, as long as we're winning, I think no one's going to care if they get the ball or not, just as long as we're driving down the field and putting points on the board. Winning cures all headaches and all that. So as long as Baker keeps doing what he did yesterday, I think the Browns are going to be in a lot better shape than they were the first few weeks.
Yeah, being able to incorporate everybody, especially with all the talent the Browns have on offense, it's very difficult to do week in and week out. And what you saw yesterday is the Browns took one of the best receivers in the NFL, made him a decoy for most of the passing game, and you saw the benefits that they were able to reap from that. The long pass to Ricky Seals-Jones Beckham ran a route and drew the attention of two defenders that allowed Seals-Jones to go up the sideline. And I think it was a gain of like 53 yards that Baker found him for. There were a few other occasions where the same thing happened with Odell being a decoy and Jarvis Landry making a couple catches. He had a big day with 8 catches for 167 yards. So there's multiple ways to use Odell Beckham. You could try to feed him the ball, try to force defenses to cover him, or you could do what they did yesterday, and that is, line him up in every position, have him draw the attention of the defense, and use him in that decoy role to where your other playmakers in an offense that is so talented can shine and really come through, for an offense that was really struggling before yesterday.
Yeah, you brought up the Seals-Jones play because Next Gen had the little graphic of the play. I think Earl Thomas and Marlon Humphrey were doubling Beckham, and he just ran a simple hitch route. And, Seals-Jones ran a fade route and was able to get the ball and turn upfield and make a big play. That's, one of the instances. Another instance was the little option shovel pass where, Beckham was running first and Landry was behind him, and Baker, faked it, pitched it to Landry, and, Landry had the chance to either pitch it to Beckham or take it himself. Well, a corner focused his attention on Beckham, and Landry was able to cut and go down the sideline. Was almost a touchdown. Beckham tried to make a late block, but, that's the thing. Like, I think Beckham, is happy here because he's part of a potential winning organization where the Giants really weren't a winner during his time there. And, he's good friends with the guys around him. And I think as long as they're seeing the benefits of what the attention Odell brings on that field, then only good things I think will come out of it. And I know people are going to say, well, Beckham's not going to be happy if he doesn't get the ball. Well, I think, he's going to get the ball at some point because the defense is going to have to be kept honest with all the talent on this team. And B, if he's seeing his best friend, Jarvis Landry, have a monster game like he did yesterday and the Browns are winning, then I really don't think Beckham's going to get mad about not getting the ball.
Yeah, winning cures all. And you brought up a great point about keeping the defense honest, because what's going to start to happen is, once the Browns, continue to do this thing with using him as a decoy, they're going to start to back off Odell Beckham, and that's when they're really going to be able to burn some of these defenses deep or however they want to. If you start to lay off Odell and focus your attention on the other playmakers that have been successful. So his time will come. He'll have his monster games. He'll have his 150-yard, 2-touchdown games. He'll probably have 2 or 3 of those this season, and it's just a matter of time for him. Let's talk about the other guy that had a real big day receiving. That was Ricky Seals-Jones. He had the stats here. He had 3 catches, 80 yards. He had the first touchdown for Baker Mayfield, which was a fantastic play to where everything was developing to the right. Seals-Jones came back to the left side of the formation and pretty much walked into the end zone after Baker delivered the ball to him. You talked about Seals-Jones after the Njoku injury and the impact that he could bring, and we really started to see that yesterday with this Browns offense.
Yeah, he got in a little bit during the Rams game, and just watching his Cardinals tape, I knew that he could be a contributor to this team if given the opportunity. And yesterday the Browns were using Brown and Harris more in the running game as blockers. Pharaoh Brown had a pretty solid catch, but to get Seals-Jones involved in the offense, it was great to see. I know I was at work during the first half, and you text me Seals-Jones in all caps, and I'm like, they finally got him involved. And I hope that's just the beginning of what he can potentially do, not only right now, but even when Njoku comes back. Keep Seals-Jones involved in this offense. He's a big, athletic playmaker at the tight end position. They could even stretch him out to be a potential wide receiver if an injury happens, which we hope doesn't happen. But, utilize a weapon like that. And, one of our buddies, Locked On Browns, Pete Smith called him the potential Brashard Perriman of this year's Browns team. And, that's fine. If he has a solid season and then is able to go get a big contract out of this, more power to him. But hopefully he continues to make big plays for the Browns.
Yeah, he had that 150-plus yard. He had the touchdown. Hopefully they could incorporate him more, while Njoku is out. If those two guys are able to coexist when Njoku comes back and they're healthy, that's only going to help this offense out even more. And we talked about before the season about how Njoku was primed for a big year, and you start to see the benefits of why yesterday. When you have all the other playmakers going off, I know Odell Beckham wasn't, but using him as a decoy, Jarvis Landry making plays, there's going to be routes that are open for tight ends in this offense, and that's where I thought Njoku was going to have a big year. And if Ricky Seals-Jones can fill that void until he gets back and is able to reap the benefits of all those other playmakers, then so be it. You'll take it any way you can get it, and hopefully Seals-Jones continue to be consistent in catching the football and continue to get open and really help out this Browns offense. Switching to the defensive side, yesterday was a real quiet day for Myles Garrett, but the other guys on the defensive line, Olivier Vernon, Larry Ogunjobi, Sheldon Richardson, Devereaux Lawrence, who had an interception at the end of the game, all stepped up, and I think that's a bit a result of Baltimore really focusing a lot of their attention on Myles Garrett. But this defensive line is so talented that if you do that, having those other guys in one-on-one situations is going to get you beat at times.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about in the pregame how, outside of Stanley and Orlando Brown Jr., that, that interior of the Ravens offensive line was a little inexperienced. And, they focused on Myles well yesterday. He doesn't come up in the box score, but I had to go back and watch it again. But I'm sure, he was disruptive, and I'm sure the Ravens focused some attention on him. But like you said, the other guys stepped up. They had 4 sacks total. Vernon got in there. Richardson and Ogunjobi have continued to make plays. And we talked about how this defensive line is the strongest unit on the team. To see Devereaux Lawrence, who, had a dominant preseason, was kind of quiet the first couple weeks, and he broke out and had a solid game yesterday. Had that interception. He had I think he had a sack. To see him get in there, and that was late in the game when Richardson went down with an injury, but to see the depth come in and step up and play, like you're seeing more of Chad Thomas, seeing Equale out there, like we are pretty deep on that defensive front, and even with Jannard Avery inactive again, to see everybody contributing on that defensive front is really good to see, because that's going to give time for Myles Garrett and others to get some rest, because we know how much snaps they played last year, and to see them all step up and contribute yesterday was pretty good.
Yeah, if you're able to get guys in there, give some of your starters just a quick breather, and the talent drop off is not too significant. It's a must thing to do. You were right about last year. Myles Garrett played in way too many snaps. They've backed off on that a little bit this year. It's gotten better, but when you have guys like Olivier Vernon and other guys that are able to step up behind those caliber of players, it only helps your defense later in the game. Joe Schobert yesterday, 17 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. He just continues week in and week out so far this season to give the John Dorsey and the Cleveland Browns reason to extend him, and I would hope that they decide to give him an extension. But the way he's been playing through the first quarter of the season has been really phenomenal, and there's just so much that he brings to this defense. Besides, being a much better tackler than he was last year. He's not missing as many tackles, but being that middle linebacker, being the on-field general, and directing everybody where to go, that is just so valuable compared to the amount of production that he's also been able to provide this defense.
Yeah, for those that say that he is overrated or not that good, like, I don't know what you're watching, but he's the leader of that defense, and as good as the Browns defense are, he's the catalyst of it. And I mean, we're missing Kirko for sure, and Mac Wilson is playing, I think, a lot more and a lot earlier than we expected this season. But and he's struggling a little bit, but I think he'll get better. But to see Schobert, he's one of the best linebackers in the league, and I think with the Browns' success, I think more people will realize that. I'm with you. I mean, I don't know what the status of the contract extension talks are, but they really need to pay him. You don't want to lose him. Look at Baltimore, for example. Their defense isn't the same without C.J. Mosley. And, of course, they lost Suggs and Weddle too, but, C.J. Mosley was the catalyst of that defense too. And you could see how much they're struggling without him. If we let Schobert go and let him walk in free agency and him go to another team, I think the Browns are deeply going to regret it. I mean, he's sitting right now top 5 in the league in tackles with along the ranks of Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly, and I think Schobert's right up there with those guys in terms of impact to a team.
One thing that was really questionable going into yesterday was the defensive secondary. They were without Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, and Morgan Burnett again yesterday, but for all intents and purposes, they were able to do a really good job, and Terrence Mitchell and others on that defense. Jermaine Whitehead had a fantastic game after having a really bad game against the Rams. When you're able to have guys that can be fringe starters per se, to come in when guys are injured and to have the impact that Jermaine Whitehead had yesterday, it just shows the depth of this defense that John Dorsey has built, and to have that amount of success yesterday was absolutely needed without having your starters there.
Yeah, definitely. Credit to Dorsey for adding depth to this team on all accounts. And I mean, Terrence Mitchell and TJ Carey were kind of under the radar free agent moves last offseason, and they stepped up in a big way. Mitchell's been a solid number 2 corner. Obviously, the last couple of weeks he's been the number 1 corner for us with Greedy and Ward out. And then TJ Carey, for a guy that was primarily just a nickel, he has stepped up and he's played extremely well. They're both solid tacklers, something that Ward and Greedy are getting better at, but not as good as those guys. To see, so they really have had solid games against a tough Rams offense, and then a sometimes explosive Ravens offense. And Jermaine Whitehead, we gave him a ton of slack. I know our buddy Jeff Lloyd did as well last week, but yeah, he stepped up and had a good performance. That interception was a beauty. Lamar throwing a deep pass, and Jermaine played some great coverage on that and was able to pick the ball off in the end zone. So, he had a great game. Hopefully he builds on that. I think, Justin Burris' performance against the Rams probably motivated Whitehead a little more, just because, his roster spot was potentially in danger if Burris kept producing, and Burris didn't play much yesterday. So I'm sure Whitehead felt motivated, and he backed it up with a solid performance.
Yeah, the defensive depth was something that you and I talked about going into the offseason as something that the Browns really needed to address, and they sure did. Dorsey has done a great job of building this roster, and as you continue year after year, going through off seasons, with the type of talent that we have, if you can consistently build depth and account for injuries, which you never want to see happen, but they do in the NFL, it's only going going to equate to success. And that's why teams like the Steelers and Patriots have been so good, is because they could just plug and play guys because they've been in their system and program for so many years behind these starters that they're able to come in, have no worry that they'll be able to execute and do their job. So the defensive depth for the Browns has been really good these first 4 weeks, especially missing pretty much your starting secondary the last couple of weeks. And how good was Demarius Randall yesterday coming back from his concussion? I'll use air quotes on that concussion. The previous missing the previous 2 games. Talk about his performance and what you saw in his return to the field.
Oh, he was great. I mean, we talked about in the pregame how he was going to be needed to stop, Hollywood Brown among the other speedy receivers that Baltimore has, and he did a good job. I mean, none of the Baltimore receivers had more than 60 yards, and that was only because Willie Snead had that garbage time touchdown at the end of the game. But Randall was great. He got in and had a sack as well. For him to play every snap coming off the concussion, it was good. He was fired up. He was barking during the pregame, firing up the team, and he's a vital part of the Cleveland Browns team. Obviously, he was part of the culture change last season, and to see him come back in there and have a good game was definitely something good to see.
Any final thoughts about this game before we move on?
Just to say the special teams unit was awesome as well. I mean, Schobert, whatever his name is, we'll get the pronunciation down eventually. He was solid. I'm sure Jamie Gillen was thrilled. He only had to punt 3 times because he had to do a lot of punting the first 3 weeks. And also the coverage team's been amazing so far for the first 4 weeks. Kadarrell Hodge, which was one of the waiver pickups we got, see him down there on every kickoff, every punt return. He has been excellent in coverage. He's found his spot on this team, and I think, obviously Callaway's coming back this week. I don't think Hodge will be the odd man out at receiver. I think that's probably going to be Tywon Taylor.
Yeah, I'm thinking so as well, especially with his lack of kick returning skills yesterday and Antonio Callaway coming back, which we'll talk about more in our next episode. Because we're 4 games into the season, what we wanted to do is discuss the Browns' grades and kind of give a report card, for the units, the offense, defense, and special teams, and through the first quarter of the season. But before we do that, we would be remiss without telling you that we did not have a poll yesterday for our 1085 top dog of the game, because you and I decided that after 3 touchdowns, 165 yards, including an 88-yard touchdown, that Nick Chubb was by far the unanimous pick for top dog of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it was hands down he was the top dog. I mean, if it wasn't for him, it'd probably go to Joe Schobert just because of his monster game defensively. But, I mean, it was hard to go pick anybody else besides Nick Chubb for that award.
I won't spoil who my dark horse pick is for top dog of the game yesterday, because I'm going to talk about it coming up here in a second. But, all right, let's start with the offense. What overall grade would you give this offense so far this season, and which one player is at the top of the class on offense?
I'm giving the Browns offense a B. I mean, that might be a shock to some people, but, taking into account, obviously the passing game has been average, but I think the running game's I've given it an A so far. And the guy at the top of the class obviously is Nick Chubb. I mean, he's had almost 400 yards in the first 4 weeks, on pace for nearly 1,600 yards, which I think we both said he would go over 1,250, I think was our over-under for him, and he's well on pace to go over that. He has been as dominant as any running back in the NFL so far this season. We always talked about it. He can have like 3 defenders on him, and his legs are going to keep churning. And then we see yesterday, he was around a 4.5 guy at the combine, but you could argue that he's got 4.3 speed. He has the fastest recorded touchdown so far this season at nearly 22 miles an hour, and he has been the catalyst on offense. And as long as they keep feeding him the ball, I think the offense is going to keep clicking and keep getting better as the season progresses.
Yeah, even though the offense has struggled for the first 3 weeks of the season before yesterday, you saw when he ran the ball that the offense looked completely different. And when you're able to get some of those gash plays and able to keep the defense honest and respecting the run, it only helps out the passing game later on. And for me, he definitely is the top of the class. I agree with you on that. Grade-wise, I wanted, I'll say a lower to mid-level C. They've just been, because they played so poorly the first few weeks and weren't able to get things together, that's why I would put them so low. But yesterday definitely raised it from being like almost a failing performance to raising it to a C level, just because of putting 40 points up on the board, having over 500 yards of offense. We finally saw the potential of what this offense could truly be. So far this season, I would give him a low to a mid C. All right, on the defensive side, what grade would you give the defense overall, and who is the top of the class for you on defense?
I gave them a B. I think they've been solid, but there's been some times where, coverage is broken down, they've missed some tackles, obviously like the Titans game was really disappointing, albeit, not all the points given up in them were on the defense. It was, the offensive mistakes, and, the defense was just worn out. But they've gotten better from that point. I wouldn't give them an A just yet, just because there's some issues there. Obviously, the linebacker position minus Joe Schobert, it's been average to poor at times. Obviously, you're dealing with some rookies, and Adarius Taylor is not a starting NFL linebacker, so. And then the whole Jannard Avery thing, which is still a mystery to everybody. But, I'll give him a solid B, B+. The guy at the top of the class has to be number 95, Myles Garrett. Already with, I think, 6 sacks through the first 4 weeks. He's been as dominant as any pass rusher in the league, minus maybe Khalil Mack and Shaq Barrett, who has, shocked the NFL world with his dominant start for Tampa. But, Myles will be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, I think, as we get towards the end of the season. As long as he cleans up his mistakes with the penalties and whatnot, I mean, he is such a freak on that defensive front that it's hard for opposing offensive lines to stop him.
Yeah, I would definitely give this defense a B as well. Especially with all the injuries that they have had, they've been able to overcome some of that adversity and be able to perform really well. In terms of top of the class, I kind of teased it earlier, but for me, the top of the class on this defense, it's not a player, but it's Steve Wilks. Here's a guy who got fired from his job in Arizona last year, has come in, take control of this defense, has done a really good job. The Browns are tied for 7th in pass yards given up per game at only 215 and a quarter so far this season. You've seen what he's been able to do with Myles Garrett and allowing him to be more himself. The injuries that we've discussed, being able to overcome those and still performing at a high level, holding that high-powered Rams offense to only 20 points last week, missing 5 defensive starters back there. I just can't give Steve Wilks enough credit, and he has been such a blessing to this team in terms of his defense, and they've done such a good job that, for me, the top of the class so far this season has to be the way he's been able to coach this defense and overcome all those injuries.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. I mean, Wilkes has done a fantastic job, and if the Browns have as a successful season as we think they're going to, as it continues to progress, I would not be shocked if Wilkes gets some head coaching interviews again. I think he got a raw deal in Arizona. He's proving once again that he's a solid defensive coordinator, and I think he will get another shot at some point to be a head coach.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you're a successful team, other teams are going to pick off assistant coaches, and I can't see him being here more than a couple seasons if he's not able to get another head coaching opportunity soon. How about the special teams? I know we went into this season very unsure of how things were going to go. With going in with rookies Austin Seibert and Jamie Gillen. We thought that the kicking game was going to be very hit and miss in terms of Austin Seibert, but ever since he missed that first extra point, he's made every single kick since. So maybe through 4 games that we could relax, and I would pretty much give them. I would give them an A if it weren't for the mishaps on the return game. So I'm going to give them a solid B plus. But I think that when you're looking at the kicker and punter specifically, they've definitely performed at an A level so far.
Yeah, I'm giving him an A. I've been so impressed with Seibert. Since the missed extra point, like you said, he's been perfect. He's been fantastic, well worth the draft pick. Although I still think they probably could have got him later on in the draft. I still don't understand drafting him in the 5th round, but it is what it is. And Jamie Gillen, some of us were hesitant to let him be the starting punter, but he's actually been one of the best punters in the league. I think out of his 18 punts, 11 have gone inside the 20, which I think is still tops in the National Football League. He's been solid as a holder, obviously. His chemistry with Seibert has been on point. And, the return game could be better. Punt returns have actually been good. When Jarvis Landry's been back there, he's been solid. I think the kick returns will get better. You would have to think that Callaway or even Hilliard or Dearness Johnson get back in there, because I ultimately think they will move on from Tywan Taylor later this week. And the coverage unit, I think Coach Prefer's been solid with these guys. Like I mentioned earlier, Hodge and Tavier Thomas have been down there like every kick. They're right there at the ball as soon as the guy gets it on the return. So I'm giving them an A. I think they've been the best unit potentially of this team so far through 4 games.
What grade would you give the Browns overall after having a 2-2 start through the first 4 games this season?
I would give them a solid B. I mean, after the Tennessee game, they have slowly been getting better and better. They're not perfect. They're still making strides, and it's not an unfinished product. You heard Freddie Kitchens say in his post-game speech, he goes, I wanted to see what you guys were going to be when adversity hits you guys. And it was clear, after that Sunday night game against the Rams that, they had a lot to prove, and these guys have come in and worked and, prove it to everybody that, this isn't the same old Browns. They still have a lot of work to do. I think they're going to continue to work and get better and better each and every day. And I think this is only the beginning. I think you still take it one game at a time. I don't want to look too far ahead down the road this season. But I'm giving them a solid B. I think, and they can only get better at this point. And now they're in the driver's seat in the AFC North. They're 1 up on everybody. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out the last 12 weeks. But you just got to take it one game at a time and focus on San Francisco next.
Yeah, I would give them a solid C plus. I don't want to give them a B yet because I still have some questions about this team, especially with the way the offense performed the first few weeks. Yesterday went a big way in raising that grade for me on what they've been able to do so far. But I think by the end of the season that grade is going to raise significantly. As they continue to build together as a team and, able to piece things together. And Freddie Kitchens finds out what he truly has. in this team. He talked about last week how, when he took over, they were already well into the season, and they somewhat had things rolling and ready to go, and he was just able to build off of that. And this year he has I won't say a completely different team, but he has a lot of new pieces that he has to incorporate. They do have Kareem Hunt coming back later this season. So there's still room for growth, a lot of room for growth on this offense. And, the defense, I'm okay with if they're able to play like this all season long, they're going to be in a good position to make the playoffs and go even farther. So the defense just needs to continue what they're doing. Hopefully the offense, and I think we all believe that it can, get together as we move on for the rest of the season. That the offense is what needs to gel. And I think after yesterday, we can slowly see that we're getting there. All right, Jack, anything else before we get on out of here?
Oh, man, we're good to go.
All right. Well, we have something coming soon, and we wanted to announce, well, I won't say announce, but we have a date, October 15th. There will be something launching, so be on the lookout for that. I want to sneak that in there before you plug what you got going on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to that. That's a big day for us. We've been working on something, and we can't wait to unveil it to you all. So definitely stay tuned. But as always, in the meantime, follow me on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We'd absolutely appreciate any 5-star reviews you would want to send our way. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. With all that, on this Victory Monday, on this 1085 Victory Pod, most importantly, and as always, go Browns.